We now move on to element 2. Element 2 is the role of databases in information management. Databases providing quite a large amount of information nowadays on customers' behaviour. So what we want students to be aware of are the types of customer data that are now available within databases. The principal types, of course, being things like behavioural data, data that the volunteers have volunteered data, and attributed data that may be linked to information that exists within the database. It's probably also worthwhile touching on information that comes from other sources, such as computerized sources, so things like cookies and other information coming from the internet feeding into that as well. We'd like to use that sort of information for profiling customers, so students should be aware of how they can profile customers using that sort of information, and how it can also be used for things like market intelligence, personalising certain offerings for customers, and building relationships. So it might be worthwhile touching on things like customer relationship management, maybe at a basic level, but to give an understanding of how that fits against having a database. They will have to have some knowledge also of how you develop such a database, the setting up of such a database in terms of identifying the needs of the users within the organisation as to what they require from the information, a little bit on evaluating software, what they should be looking for in terms of different software for databases, and how to process the information in terms of how they format it, validate it, maybe deduplicate information, etc. So all of it is used in a more useful format. We will expect students to touch on, and I should stress touch on, the area of data warehousing, data marts and data mining. Now these areas are quite complex, but it might be worthwhile for the students to be aware of what these things are and to be able to understand that people use such things as data warehousing to try and identify relationships and better understand behaviours and patterns of behaviours of the customer. Finally, within this section, we would be expecting people to have knowledge of some of the data protection legislation. Now, I know this won't be the same in every country, but being aware that data protection legislation does have an impact in a number of countries in the world, and the number of countries is increasing. They should also be aware of the various types of database information providers, such as things like list brokers, profilers, and others who provide such information. And maybe even if there isn't data protection legislation, just some of the ethical and legislative issues involved in using such data, and in particular in merging such data with market research, because database information relates to individuals. Of course, market research is done on an anonymous basis, and therefore there are issues about trying to merge such information.